and led by Professor Bess, who is present here, in which 3/5 teachers were involved. By working together in the project, members of the team get a good professional experience and private relations with all together. Another one is institutional one. Faculty of Information Technologies and Faculty of Resource Management decided to collaborate in learning and teaching process of the common subjects, which is also today common subject, and projects also. During the last 2 or 3 years, this collaboration became more and more successful, especially for the students. We are now learning the same subject, project management, in which we should get an understanding of European Union and its institutions. The policy of European Union and financing, supporting implementation of this policy. Then the various financing programs and how to obtain financing through project proposals. And last but not least, important, preparation for proposals and tenders and project management issues. Professor Bess is engineer. He is the director of his own enterprise named Ursi. Do I pronounce correct? He is also a consultant for IT and business development. He specializes in geographic information systems. He is also a lecturer at International University from Serbia, which is a department of Sheffield University. Is it that correct also?
Yeah.
Correct. Thank you. He is a lobbyist in Brussels, European Union, which is not said before about his potential. And he managed many projects, including that one which is performed in cooperation with professional information technologies. And in this very convenient teaching and learning ambient, which is here, I think, good enough. I wish you new knowledge, perception of knowledge, good testing outcomes, new friendships established between at least 2 institutions, 2 people from these institution students. And I hope we get a new chance to meet each other again. Thank you very much. The floor is Professor Bess. For now, maybe representatives of faculty should tell us some sentences.
Dobro jutro svima. Koristim priliku da se u ime studenta i Fakulteta informacijskih tehnologija zahvalim profesoru Ulriku Bessu na dolasku i poželim mu dobrodošlicu i uspješan rad sa vama do kraja ove sedmice. Već ste čuli o čemu se radi, koja je tema ove nastave, ovih predavanja ove sedmice i nadam se da će studenti i jednog i drugog fakulteta imati koristi od ovih predavanja, posebno u oblasti upravljanja projektima, naročito ovih projekata koje financira Evropska unija. Toliko je hvala.
Dobro jutro svima. Ja dolazim iz Fakulteta za menadžment resursa. Prije svega želim da se zahvaliti profesoru Belsu manje više što ste i vi prošli i moj savjet je gledajte, učite i pisate. Sve to što naučite ovdje možete iskoristiti u praksi, tako da iskoristite maksimalno ovu jedinstvenu priliku. Želim vam svima poželjeti dosta toga da naučite, prije svega dobar rad i uspješan prije svega rad. Hvala vam svima.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Professor Brasho. Thank you very much for the introductions. I must say that I'm very happy to be here in Mostar, to be able to teach to you, to speak to you about the European Union. And I thank you, Professor Brasho, for the introduction. So you saved a little bit of my time. My name is Ulrich Bois. I must say, my name has a certain particularity, which I understand now after the introduction by Professor Brasho. Depending on the country of Europe or where you come from, or your mother language, my name is pronounced differently. I pronounce it Boas, but it is not so important at the end, so my name is Ulrich Bois. I'm from Bulgaria, this means I'm living in Bulgaria, and I believe, as you all might see from the name, you understand that I'm not Bulgarian, it's not a Bulgarian name. I'm living in Bulgaria since now around 12 years. Before this I have lived in Brussels, Professor Brasho said this, I have worked in the European Commission and decided to leave the bureaucracy, the administration, create my own company in Sofia, Bulgaria, and I'm still working in this company. So I don't need to repeat all this. Let me just emphasize one thing. The first bullet here says that I'm an engineer by education, and I believe in what I'm doing. I'm still an engineer, so I'm not a politician. I'm not, I would say, not a bureaucrat of the European Union, although we will speak a lot about policies, bureaucracy, administration of the European Union. I think that I'm really still an engineer, and I like much better technical engineering topics, which we will also speak about, but not so much, I confess. I understand also who you are, so you are third-year students, and I hope and believe that you all understand very well English, so I hope that there is no problem with English. What I find important is that you understand what I'm saying. And when I say understand, not only in terms of language, it means also I should speak loud enough that you all hear me, but I should explain all the things in such a way that you understand it. So please, I would ask if there is something that I explain or try to explain and you do not understand it, please feel free to interrupt me and ask that I can explain it maybe with different words. It is important that you understand what we are speaking about. And as I also have heard, this is more or less, I believe for all of you or most of you, the first time that you hear about European Union policies, projects, and so on. I could maybe ask, has anybody of you already worked in a project that was financed by the European Union? Big silence, nobody. Okay, so I assume what I will speak about in these 3 days is all new to you, and I'm trying at least to explain this in such a way that you all understand it, and that I reduce all these difficult and complicated things to something that is easy enough for you to understand. But nevertheless, as I said, feel free to interrupt me if there is something that you don't understand. We can also discuss the individual topics. It should not be that I only speak and at the end you fall asleep. So feel free to ask questions, not only when you do not understand something, also if you like to know something more about a certain topic, I will be happy to explain it to you and to discuss it with you. Although I must say And I put here what I want to discuss. So you should get an understanding of the European Union. And this is what we will start with now. What is the European Union? How is it structured? What are the policies? What are the financing programs? And how can you participate in European Union financing programs? These are more or less the issues. And we have 3 days together. I think you have this in front of you. We start each day at 8:15 with 5 classes of 45 minutes each, with breaks in between. Now the first day, today, what I want to do is to speak in general about the European Union. So the day today should give you some base knowledge of what you need to know when you work with European Union projects. This means my assumption is in some way that you do not want, or at least most of you, do not want to become politicians to work with the European Union. Maybe some of you would like to. I know that a lot of people would like to get jobs in the European Commission, and it is not so bad, but it's very administrative, I can tell you right away. So today you should get some base knowledge, what you should know when you work with European projects. So we will speak a lot about European Union, about the policies, and about some basics of financing. And if we have time, at the end we could have a short discussion about what is your opinion about the European Union. And certainly there are questions, should the country of yours become a member of the European Union? Now I cannot say that you will stick exactly to such a schedule. Sometimes I have less material for 45 minutes, so I will then start immediately with the next one. Sometimes I have more, so this gives some kind of indication. Now the next 2 days it will be more practical, although still on a, I must admit, on a high level. Tomorrow what I want to speak about is one way of financing projects. It means you have here the abbreviation IPA. This means the pre-accession funds, or instruments for pre-accession countries. Then we will speak about the so-called structural funds. This is one way by the European Union to finance projects, and I want to go a little bit more in detail with a certain project management methodology that is in this area very important. And when you participate in pre-accession funds or structural funds, this is something that everybody needs to know. On Friday, we will speak about the research programs, which is a very big program of the European Union, very important, not only for universities, not only for those who really do research, but also for companies, for all kinds of people. I will give you some examples of projects, so this is more, how to say, the entertaining part. And at the end I will speak a little bit about the future. So this is the program for these 3 days, very briefly. On Friday there should be an examination. So on Thursday, as I understand it, you will have time to prepare the examination, and you will have on Friday 10 questions that you have to answer within 1 hour. As I have heard, the time for the examination is not fixed, and I was told that I should discuss this with you, so I could propose, for example, 10 o'clock in the morning for the examination. Would this be all right for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we say Friday, 10 o'clock. I think it will not be so difficult, but nevertheless, you have to pay attention in these 3 days. So this was the introduction. Any questions on the course in general? Any questions on how to proceed? No. As I said, please don't hesitate to ask questions. And so we will continue with the first topic, the European Union. We have time until 9 o'clock for the first coffee break. So in some way what I have done is I start from the very top to explain to you what is the European Union and go then down to more detail. So in this now following half hour approximately, you should get an understanding of what the European Union in general is. So what is the European Union? And there are various ways to say this. I've tried to put it together on this slide. European Union firstly consists of 27 member states. Okay? 27 member states with many different languages, more than 27. I confess I've forgotten how many languages, but it's more than 27. And what is important to understand, what also I had to learn, the European Union is a union of countries, and it is the first time in history that such a union was established only by consensus, by treaties. So it's not by war that countries were conquered, as it is the case in America, for example, or in the United States. The European Union is based on treaties. So it's based on discussions, on consensus, and I can say on the democratic process to bring all these countries together. Firstly, this was the union issue. Then we have in the European Union some institutions, and we will speak about this. So the member states, which are still independent states, so we are not living in a federation, it's not a federation of countries. The individual member states delegate some decision-making to so-called shares institutions, as, for example, the European Commission. Then the decisions are made democratically at European level, not all decisions, but decisions that concern all the countries. Firstly, then we have an open market, let me say, between all the countries. It is called a single market. We have 500 million citizens in the European Union that are free to move around in the European Union. Firstly, there is one single currency which is called the euro. You know all this, although not all the 27 countries have adopted the euro. So I believe this is all rather well known. What is maybe not so well known is the European Union finances a lot of projects all over the world. So it is the largest supplier of development and humanitarian aid programs in the world. Okay, any question to this? So, and this is a map that shows the member states. So all what is blue on this map are member states, and you see some other colors. In particular here, in our region, there is also another color over here, which is Iceland. So here we see two different types of colors. One is this light blue, which are the so-called candidate countries. And we have a list of candidate countries which are Iceland, Macedonia, or the Republic of Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, and Turkey. And there is one special country, actually this is maybe not so well recognizable. Again, a different country which is called an acceding country, Croatia. So Croatia is on the way to become a member of the European Union. You remember when it will be? Yeah, exactly. And then we have three countries in yellow. One you know very well. This is Albania and this is Kosovo, which are not candidate countries, not members of the European Union. And I have here that Albania has an application submitted, but it is not accepted as a candidate country. Then the others, Kosovo and Bosnia-Herzegovina, are so-called potential candidate countries, not yet applied for membership. And Kosovo is actually a very special case. We will come back to this, in fact. So we have the European member states, 27, will be 28 in a few months. Then we have the candidate countries and we have the potential candidate countries. figures about the European Union, I said this already, 27 member states, 500,000 or 500 million inhabitants. This means the European Union is the world's third largest country after China and India. We have in the European Union a gross domestic product of about 11,000 million, which is the largest of the world. In this respect, the European Union is in the world the major trading partner, and I said already the leading supplier of development aid. Now there is something, and we will come back to this after the coffee break, the ambition to become the world's most dynamic, knowledge-based economy, with ICT playing a central role. So this is a very strong ambition, and it is now well anchored in all European Union policies. Of course, I think it can be debated, but this is here now the major policy issue of the European Union. Now, what does it do? I put here the mission. I said already in the beginning that the European Union was created just based on consensus. This means what they want to do is to provide peace, prosperity and stability for all its peoples. This, of course, is very general, but in some way I would say the baseline why countries want to become members of the European Union. Now then, what you see, where is it? Yeah, meet the challenges of globalization and preserve the diversity of the peoples of Europe. The European Union is very often criticized that it wants to harmonize or unify all countries and all peoples of Europe. And in some way, people can get the impression that everybody in the European Union should be the same. But looking at the mission of the European Union, it is not true. One point, this is from the point of view of the European Union very important, is that they want to preserve the diversity of the peoples of Europe. It is not that Bosnians, Germans, French people should all become the same. The mission of the European Union clearly says that the diversity, the cultural diversity, the cultural heritage of the people in Europe should be respected and be preserved, even if in reality sometimes it looks different. And this is also in some way expressed here. Uphold the values that Europeans share. So there are European Union policies, and policies have to be implemented very often in national regulation and national laws. And they aim at sustainable development, at the sound environment, respect for human rights, the social market economy, and so on. So the important issue here is, when we speak about the mission of the European Union, is peace and stability on one side, is of course globalization. This means to have the market for everybody, a common market, a single market, and then also to preserve the cultural identity. This is how I would summarize all these points. Now, there is of course a lot of history, and I have tried to put it together on two slides. When was the European Union created? Of course, you read it here. It goes back to 1950. This means the European Union is in some way a reaction to the disaster of the Second World War, which ended in 1945. We have just celebrated the end of the Second World War. On the 9th of May, and this is a kind of historic day, the French Foreign Minister Robert Schuman first publicly proposed the ideas that led to the European Union. So it came from France as one of the countries that were the victors after the Second World War, and they have invited a group of countries to first establish a kind of union, but this was not yet the European Union. So this was the first basic idea. Of course, it was not Robert very strong proponent of the idea. So this idea led then in 1951 to the establishment of only the European Coal and Steel Community. So this means a kind of economic union. Why coal and steel? Somebody know this? Yes, why coal and steel? Do you remember the history? Yeah. Well, there was a very practical reason actually behind this, because both in France and in Germany there were large regions of coal. In Germany, the Ruhrgebiet, and there were corresponding regions in France. And production of steel at that time was very important. We had steel production in Belgium, in France, and in Germany, close to the common borders. That during the war was, of course, used for military purposes. But the first idea was actually to bring together this very big region of steel and coal production. And this was, as I said, a very practical reason to have a promotion, a better development of the economy. And because of this, we see here Belgium. Belgium has a very big steel production. France, Western Germany, Eastern Germany was communist at that time. We have also Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and Italy would also be interested in steel production. So these were the 6 founding members of the European Union. And this worked very well, so that at the end, these 6 countries decided to get even closer together with the so-called Treaty of Rome in 1957, and 1973 was the first expansion to 9 member states that joined the European Economic Community, as it was called at that time. Denmark, Ireland, and UK joined. And then we see a further consolidation of Europe. More members joined. We saw the creation of the European Parliament in 1979, and in 1981 Greece joined the European Union. So what I find important in this slide, firstly, the European Union goes back to 1951 with the establishment of this European Coal and Steel Community, proceeds then to establish a greater common market between the 6 founding members and get the first extension. Now the next part of the history of the European Union means on one side more countries joined the European Union until what many people say historic Eastern enlargement, 10 more countries, and 2007 Bulgaria and Romania, 2013 Croatia, but also the establishment of treaties that bring the countries closer together. So very important treaty is the Treaty of Maastricht. I don't want to go in detail here. I confess I'm not prepared to go here into much detail because it's a political issue, but very often when you hear things about the European Union, people speak about the Treaty of the European Union, and it means they mean the Treaty of Maastricht. Maastricht is a small town in the Netherlands, close to the Belgian and German border. So this treaty has laid the foundation for the economic and monetary union for the next stage of integration. And this was, I must also say, a long time before what we call now the economic crisis. So 2002, the euro was introduced, and then continuing enlargement. So this is in some way, I've tried to put together on these 2 slides the major parts of the history of the European Union. Any question on this? Now, I have mentioned several times the word single market. What is it? Who of you has heard already about the single market or has heard the word before? So the single market is, let me say it in another word, common market in the European Union. but the official word is single market. And this means, and this is important, that in the European Union, after the Treaty of Maastricht, everything can move around freely. Everything means goods, capital, services, and people. And this is the important thing. So you can have a company in, let me say, Bulgaria and sell your services or your goods without any problem everywhere in Europe, in the European Union, I should say. Everybody from the European Union can move to another European Union member state. So when Bosnia and Herzegovina becomes a member of the European Union, you are free to move to England, Germany, or wherever you like. Of course, I have to admit this a bit the theory, and there are still a lot of discussions about this point. In particular, when you hear the news, you hear that in the UK many people are afraid that a lot of Bulgarians and Romanians move to the UK.
Yes.
There is a certain deadline, I think, if I remember correctly, it's next year, when all the barriers should be dropped. And there is a lot of discussion around this. And it seems that the people in the UK are afraid, because actually what has happened after 2004, that a lot of Polish people moved to the UK. But this is more political story. So important here, we speak about goods, capital, services, people. Capital means that you can have a bank account somewhere else in the country. And then there should be no trade barriers. This means the European Union wishes to introduce standards and common taxes so that all these four so-called freedoms can move around. So only as a reminder, because it is really very important, the single market in the European Union. What is important here are these four, I call it freedoms, that can move around in Europe, and that the trade barriers between the countries should be removed. Now, what does the European Union do? And here I have two words that I've put in bold. One is policy and one is funds. This is actually what we will speak about in these 3 days, but for me, the important words of the activities of the European Union are policies and funds. Of course, this means many things. So we have written that the European Union acts in a wide range of policy areas: economic, social, regulatory, finances, and we have solidarity policies, innovation policies, and then the European Union funds these policies. And there is an annual or rather multi-annual budget, I will come back to this, which helps to implement those kind of policies. So this means, you imagine, that at the European level, European Commission, European Parliament, policies are developed, and the member states have to agree to this, so that at the end the policies can be applied or implemented in all individual member states, and actually also in the candidate countries. Now, how is it done? And I'm coming close to the end. What are the major institutions? I believe you all have heard about this. We have 3 major institutions in the European Union. There are more actually, but these are the 3 most important. So firstly, we have the Council of Ministers. So the Council of Ministers represents the member states, or the governments of the member states, and is really the main decision body of the European Union. This means when there are decisions have to be taken, it is done at the end by the Council of Ministers. Then we have the European Parliament. Everybody, every citizen of the European Union in all member states have or should elect their representatives which are sent to the European Parliament. And this is an institution that discusses the laws, the policies of the European Union and prepares it for a decision by the Council of Ministers. Now the European Commission, certainly, which is the biggest, and I would say, when you work with the European Union, the most visible European institution, is the executive body of the European Union. It represents the common interests of the EU, has the right to propose legislation, and looks after the implementation of the legislation. So three main bodies: the Council of Ministers, the European Parliament, and the European Commission. I will speak more about the European Commission a bit later, but this is important to understand. Now there is kind of problems, and when you listen to news or read newspapers, you may see that there are different councils actually, which is a bit confusing. So we have the Council of Ministers, who I just have mentioned, are simply councils, which consists of government ministers from the EU countries. It could be the finance ministers, this could be economy ministers, this could be the prime ministers. And then we have, which is a special council, the European Council. The European Council consists of the heads of states or the governments. So the President of Bulgaria, the Chancellor of Germany, for example. So this is a special form of the European Council, and they come together at special meetings which are called summits in order to discuss and take decisions of the very important problems. Now there is something else, and you have to be aware that this has to be distinguished from the European Council. This is called the Council of Europe, which is not a European institution, but it is an intergovernmental organization to protect human rights. So it's more a general organization with actually 47 member states. So it's called Council of Europe, but it's not fully European, and this is, if you're not aware of it, sometimes a bit confusing. So we're speaking about the European Council and the Council of Ministers, to be distinguished from the Council of Europe. Further important point: how does the European Union prepare legislation? I've put it together in this picture that I've copied somewhere from European Commission websites, and this is the normal procedure. I told you already, the European Commission is the executive organ. So what they do, they develop policy, they develop new laws and propose them to the European Council and to the Parliament. So they propose, they make maybe studies for new legislation, and then this is discussed in the European Parliament and decided by the Council. It is written here, co-decision. This means the European Parliament can vote against a decision of the Council, but the real decision-taking power is for the European Council. So this is the basic idea of European legislation prepared by the European Commission and decided by the Council and the Parliament. And actually, the European Parliament got over these years more and more power. Now, important is also to understand what type of legislation exists in the European Union. We have actually, as a legislation, two types. One is a regulation and the other one is a directive. A regulation is something that the European Union issues, and this is then binding to all member states directly. Of course, don't forget, that is behind this decision by the European Council. So the member states are included in the decision. But here this is issued by the European Union and member states have to apply it. This is different with a directive, and we have a lot of directives. A directive is a kind of European law that that is not in its form as it is issued by the European Union, binding to member states, but according to the Treaty of Maastricht, the member states have to implement this directive in national legislation. So there is a kind of, it's called transposition. So there is European law, and each member state each member state has to apply this and transpose into national law. Then there is a decision, so European Union can decide on something which is not directly European law, but it is addressed and binding to a certain group, to a certain member states. And finally, there are recommendations and opinions. So these are 4 different types of, let me say, legislative documents that exist in the European Union. Important is directive, because most of the European law consists of directives. Okay? So any question from you on all this? Was it understandable so far? Yes. Okay. So what did we do? We are nearly 9 o'clock. What did we do? I tried to explain to you what is the European Union, how can we define the European Union, what are member states, what are candidate states, and don't forget, this is also a bit complex. We have one exceeding country, which is Croatia. We have candidate states and we have potential candidate states. We spoke about the history of the European Union. So 1950, the important date, the 9th of May, actually is a European holiday which is celebrated at least by the European institution as the date of the creation of the European Union. I explained to you the major institution and bodies. We spoke a bit, I mentioned the legislative procedure and the 4 types of European legislation. So important, well, this is again the same. What are the important terms? You need to understand what is a member state, what is a candidate state. You should have a short idea what is the single market. I used the different word common market. Then we have again 4 types of European legislation. Any question? Okay. Maybe questions come later. If you have also later on questions on those kind of topics, don't hesitate. You can always ask questions. So it's exactly 9 o'clock.